Hello, Nai Z of Planet Earth. My name is Zai Ni Ademus. In this episode, we're going to be talking about human design for the Nai Z. Now, the last time we met, we talked about thinking of yourself as a character in an RPG. But another really good visualizing technique is to think of yourself as kind of a ship, like a bioship. And you could actually use any kind of visualization technique you like to help understand yourself. There are a lot of things that you could do. Superheroes work, characters in RPGs, really cool magical creatures work, bioships work. All of those are very useful. But the ship metaphor in particular is particularly useful because of when we think of human design in these very tech-heavy aspects. So that kind of seems to work well with the bioship kind of concept, but you can actually use whatever metaphors interchangeably to see and understand the magic behind your design, because they can all be useful. So the first and most important concept to get into when we talk about your human design is the concept of momentum and modulation. Momentum is the gaining of energy. Modulation is the curbing of your energy. All mojos have 4 powers. The top 2 powers are momentum powers, meaning when these powers are used, there will be a gaining of energy. The bottom 2 powers are modulation powers. So when these are used, there will be a curbing of energy. It costs energy to use these. So kind of energy funds need to be acquired from the momentum powers so you can have enough energy to spend with modulation. This is how the psyche balances out and refines itself. This gets into adaptivity and directivity, because the adaptive and directive energy fields are the primary energy flow for any mojo. Adaptive powers are on the right side of the psyche, directive powers are on the left side of the psyche. What makes a mojo directive is if their directive powers are momentum and their adaptive powers are modulation. And a mojo is adaptive if their adaptive powers are momentum and their directive powers are modulation. A Nai Z is directive because their Nai and Z are directive and they are their momentum powers, while their Jai and V are adaptive and they are their modulation powers. There's also the front and back of the psyche, in which the powers that are in front relate to the objective powers and the powers in back relate to the subjective powers. All mojos are either objective or subjective. If they're objective, then it means the powers in front are weighted more heavily, and if they're subjective, then it means the powers in back are weighted more heavily. As a Nai Z, you are subjective because you have Nai as your source, and this makes it so your subjective powers are weighted most heavily for you. In addition, all mojos have corridors. There's the perception corridor. Perception is the taking in, the gaining of information, and there is the discernment corridor, which is the making decisions based on certain criteria. As a Nai Z, you are a perception lead mojo, and this is because since you have Nai as your source power, then this means your perception corridor is actually on top. You lead with perception. Within the corridors, both of them split into 2 channels each. In the perception corridor, there is the literal and interpretive channel. The literal channel is detail-based perceptions, and interpretive being pattern-based perceptions. As a Nai Z, you are an interpretive mojo. You have 2 perception powers. All mojos have 2 perception powers, an interpretive perception or literal perception. But as a Nai Z, your Nai source power is way above your V, which is your literal power for you. So that makes you an interpretive mojo. And then in the discernment corridor, the 2 channels in there are the logic-based discernment, which is decisions based on technical, systemic, logical criteria, and there's the values-based channel, which is decisions based on emotive or humanistic criteria. As a Nai Z, you are a logic-based mojo, and this is because your Z, your logic-based discernment power, is ranked above your Jai, which is your values-based discernment power. So that makes you a logic-based mojo. So because of the fact that the Nai Z has Nai and Z as their top 2 powers, this gives them energy fields that are directive, subjective, perception lead, interpretive, and logic-based. So as a Nai Z, your Nai addresses the considerations of subjectivity and perception, and your Z addresses the considerations of objectivity and discernment. Then on your modulation side, your Zhai takes care of the considerations of subjectivity and discernment, and your V takes care of the considerations of objectivity and perception. All mojos have two compounds on both the left and right sides of their psyche. As a Nai Z, your momentum compound is going to be your Nai and your Z. So think of it like this. Your Nai and Z are intrinsically connected. They are completely fused. And so the two of them can never realistically be isolated from each other. When you do Nai, it's always coming with Z, and when you do Z, then it's always being informed by your Nai. And so this makes your Nai and your Z very unique to you as a Nai Z because of their ranking and because of the way that they're connected to each other. On the right, your minor or modulation compound is your Zhai and your V. So your Zhai and V are kind of fused together in the same way, which makes them unique because of that compound and also the way that they're ranked for the Nai Z. Now, in the last episode, we talked about how all mojos are these multi-class characters with kind of the quadrants of the psyche being the different character classes. So in the back left, then we had the wizard or hunter class. In the front left, then we had the fighter or pilot class. In the back right, then we had the tower or priest class. And in the front right, then we had the rogue or gatherer class. Now, these four quadrants also make up the four priorities of the psyche. In back, we have the worldview map priority. And if we're going to look at this in a ship metaphor, you could think of this priority as basically addressing the kind of global modeling map or itinerary for the psyche, kind of like a GPS system. So it's your Nai that addresses your priority of worldview map. So you're using your Nai to basically plot your course through life in a interpretive, speculative, long-range planning sort of way. In front left, the fighter or pilot class, in technical terms, is the dynamics mover priority. And so this is the priority that basically you can think of it as being the steerer of your ship or the booster of your ship. It's what makes it go as well as steer and move around the environment. As a Nai Z, you are using your Z as basically a logic-based pilot power. So you move dynamics and make things happen in a systemic, logic-based sort of way. Next, we have in the back right the tower or priest character class, or in technical terms, this is the compass bearings priority. It's the compass bearings that brings the psyche to equilibrium. After receiving stimulus or being moved about, it is the compass bearings power that basically centers yourself to equilibrium. As a Nai Z, then it is your compass bearings that is third ranked, and it is your Zhai that addresses the compass bearings priority. So you bring yourself to equilibrium in a values-based sort of way. So empathy, warm resonation, things like that. And then in the front right, there is the gatherer or rogue class, but in technical terms, the stimulus register priority. It is the powers that have to do with the stimulus register basically are taking in information in real time as it's emerging. And so in a ship metaphor, you can kind of think of this as being the front window in, the cockpit or something, where you're actually seeing things go down in real time. For the Nai Z, it is their V that addresses the priority of stimulus register. And so V is a literal power. So it is actually visceral, literal stimulus that you're taking in real time through your V. These priorities cannot be ranked equally in the psyche, otherwise that basically cause a logjam of the psyche. And so they actually have to be ranked in order. As a Nai Z, then your worldview map power is ranked first with your Nai, then it is your dynamics mover that is ranked second with Z, and then it's your compass bearings power that is ranked third with your Zhai, and then it's your stimulus register that is ranked fourth with your power of V. So let's finish this off by going over some of the powers that we went over in the last episode, but this time we'll fill out some of their tech specs. Nai is directive, subjective, interpretive perception. It is your first ranked or source power. It addresses the considerations of subjectivity and perception. It addresses the priority of worldview map, and it is major momentum for the Nai Z. Z is directive, objective, logic-based discernment. It is the second ranked or tandem power for the NIZ. It addresses the considerations of objectivity and discernment, and it addresses the priority of dynamics mover. Z is minor momentum for the NIZ. Then there is Zhai, which is adaptive, subjective, values-based discernment. Zhai addresses the considerations of subjectivity and discernment. It addresses the priority of compass bearings, and Zhai is minor modulation for the NIZ. Then there is your V, which is adaptive, objective, literal perception. V is the fourth ranked or polar power for the NIZ. It addresses the considerations of objectivity and perceptions of stimulus register. V is major modulation for the NIZ. All right, so now you know a little about yourself as kind of this cool, magical alien RPG character, and also a bioship and the most cutting-edge technology that natural law has to offer. So continue on to watching more episodes to continue learning more about yourself, and as always, know yourself, grow yourself, save the world.